your brain tricks you every single day. It bends your reality to keep you safe. Look at a crowded television studio during a live broadcast. The bright lights blind your eyes, the loud music locks your attention, and the constant movement traps your focus. We feel completely safe because we see familiar human life. But what happens when the noisy crowd leaves and the studio lights die? We step inside that exact same room in the deep silence of midnight. We turn on a tiny handheld flashlight, and the cold beam cuts directly through the heavy dark. A cozy morning talk show couch sits right there. A modern news broadcast desk rests a few feet away. On a digital screen at home, this artificial space looks warm, welcoming, and deeply familiar. But standing here alone, your internal biology instantly shifts. Your skin crawls, your pulse quickens, and a primitive survival alarm warns you to run away immediately. You are looking at a fake living room that has absolutely no ceiling. You're looking at a beautiful city view that is just a dusty sheet of cheap printed plastic. Giant camera lenses hang heavily from the shadows, hunting for a moving target that is no longer there. The quiet environment tries hard to look alive, but it completely lacks a human soul. This discomfort is not just a weird gut feeling. This is a severe biological glitch. Our evolutionary survival instincts instantly spot the hidden deception, forcing us to doubt the very ground beneath our feet. This mental anxiety unmasks a much deeper neurological trap that we must carefully dissect. When a physical space reveals itself to be a total lie, it breaks our psychological security. The comforting illusion collapses, leaving us completely naked in the dark. This introduces a chilling architectural mystery that science is only beginning to answer. If a simple empty room can completely shatter our trust in what we see, we must look much closer at the daily world we navigate. We have to face the unsettling truth that our own modern lives might be built on the exact same hollow framework. Every physical structure we encounter in our daily lives tells a specific truth. A typical, your brain tricks you every single day. House stands to protect a family. A local office building functions to host workers, and a neighborhood park exists to grow trees. These ordinary places have an honest and stable relationship with our physical world because their design matches their true purpose. They do not hide what they are, and they do not try to trick our eyes. A television studio operates on a completely different psychological level because it is a total fabrication. It is an environment built entirely to manufacture a temporary reality for a camera lens. The camera only looks at what is directly in front of it, meaning the space only needs to look real from one exact angle. This creates a world made of only 3 walls, where everything is a shallow imitation of a genuine place. When we pull back the bright stage lights, the physical reality of a television set becomes deeply unsettling. That beautiful brick wall you see on your screen is actually a very thin sheet of painted plastic. The high-end wooden desk where an anchor sits is made of cheap plywood held together by industrial tape and heavy sandbags on the dark side where the viewers cannot see. Beautiful city windows that look like they open up to a busy downtown street are just giant printed backdrops covered in dust. Even the books on the shelves are empty covers glued together to form the shape of knowledge. The entire space is a fragile shell, a collection of cheap materials arranged perfectly to exploit human perception. In our everyday life, we expect objects to have weight, depth, and history, but here, everything is light, hollow, and fake. This strange architecture works perfectly when the production is live because the environment is filled with movement and human energy. The fast movements of the hosts, the loud applause of a studio audience, and the rapid switching of camera angles keep our minds completely occupied. Our eyes do not have the time or the space to focus on the small cracks in the reality. The illusion succeeds because it is active, dynamic, and breathing with life. But when the cameras stop recording and the people leave the studio, falls into a quiet and ghostly limbo. It undergoes a radical psychological shift from a place of entertainment to a dead zone. A television studio loses its psychological purpose the exact moment it stops broadcasting to the world. It cannot function as a normal room because it lacks a real ceiling and true walls, yet it cannot function as a show because the magic is gone. Standing inside this silent void forces a person to stare directly at the raw mechanics of a lie. The cozy couch sits alone on cold industrial concrete, looking completely out of place without its artificial warmth. The fake indoor plants look washed out and sick under the dim safety lights. This creates a powerful sense of detachment in anyone who visits the empty set. We are no longer viewers enjoying a well-made story, but instead we feel like intruders who have stumbled behind the curtain of a giant theater. Humans rely heavily on their surroundings to feel safe, grounded, and emotionally stable. When an environment suddenly reveals itself to be a hollow mask, our confidence in the physical world around us begins to break. We realize that the space cannot be trusted, and that quiet realization leaves behind a heavy discomfort that stays with us. This specific type of discomfort reveals how easily our senses can be manipulated by the spaces we inhabit. Designers use dark psychological tricks to build these sets, deliberately playing with depth, color, and light to make a flat piece of plastic look like a heavy stone wall. They understand exactly how the human eye processes distance, and they use that knowledge to create a deceptive sense of comfort and authority. A news set is painted in specific shades of blue and wood grain to make you trust the information being delivered. A talk show uses soft textures and warm yellow lights to make you feel like you are sitting with friends. When the lights go down, you are left alone with the cold truth of that deliberate manipulation. You see the cold metal frames holding up the fake cozy world, and you realize that your emotions were being guided by a carefully planned architectural trap. Environmental psychologists have a specific term for this unique kind of architectural discomfort. They call it the architectural uncanny, a moment when a familiar place becomes suddenly strange and alien. It happens because the space is trapped between two different states of being, making it a liminal zone that has no true home in our reality. We see this exact same phenomenon when we look at an empty shopping mall at 3 in the morning, an abandoned theme park, or a school hallway during the middle of the night. These places are designed exclusively for human activity and noise, so when you remove the people, you strip away the soul of the architecture. The physical shell remains, but the purpose is dead. In a television studio, this effect is amplified 100 times because the space was never real to begin with. It is a dead copy of a reality that never existed, an empty stage that mocks our desire for a stable world. This deep discomfort proves that our eyes can be easily deceived, but it does not fully explain why our bodies react with such intense physical dread. To discover why this physical architecture causes such intense dread, we must look directly inside the complex biological machinery of the human mind. Cognitive scientists have discovered that the brain does not simply sit back and record the outside world like a passive video camera. Instead, the human brain operates as a highly advanced prediction machine. Every single second of the day, it uses past memories, stored data, and learned cultural patterns to guess what should happen next in any given environment. This constant guessing game happens completely behind the scenes, allowing humans to navigate complex surroundings quickly without freezing up from sensory overload. When the brain looks at a specific room, it instantly builds a mental map of what that space is supposed to offer. If a person walks toward a kitchen, the mind expects the smell of food and the warmth of a stove. If someone enters a library, the system prepares for quiet whispers and the texture of paper. The brain requires these solid patterns to maintain a sense of internal balance and control. When an individual looks at a television set, this internal prediction machine immediately pulls up a highly specific mental script. Over years of watching broadcasts, the mind has learned to connect the visual cues of a news desk, a talk show stage, or a morning program kitchen with specific social concepts. It associates these bright structures with human warmth, charismatic voices, entertaining stories, and a safe, controlled atmosphere, even if someone knows intellectually that a studio is just a set. The primitive parts of the brain still map it as a vibrant hub of human activity. The prediction machine prepares the body to experience a lively, socially stimulating environment. The nervous system relaxes because the visual cues suggest that this is a highly secure space filled with other humans. It is an environment designed to welcome eyes and ears, so the brain naturally drops its guard, expecting a normal, predictable flow of life. However, when a human being physically steps into that exact same space during the dark hours of midnight, a massive and violent prediction error occurs. The physical data sent by the eyes to the sensory cortex completely shatters the internal map that the brain just created. The eyes see a familiar cozy couch, but they also see heavy black cables snaking across the floor like dead vines. The gaze looks at a beautiful window view, but it also spots the rough, unfinished back of the wooden boards holding it up in the dark. Instead of vibrant human voices, there is only a thick, suffocating silence. This sharp conflict between what the brain expects and what the eyes actually see creates an immediate neurological crisis. The prediction machine suddenly glitches because it cannot find a logical way to blend these two opposing realities together. It is looking at a living space that is simultaneously a cold industrial factory floor. When this prediction error happens, the brain does not just ignore the mistake. It instantly activates its ancient internal alarm system, a small almond-shaped structure deep inside the temporal lobe, known as the amygdala. The amygdala is responsible for processing primal emotions, detecting environmental threats, and triggering survival behaviors. It does not understand modern media production. It does not know what a talk show is. And it definitely does not care about television entertainment. This primitive structure only cares about keeping the body alive in an uncertain world. When the amygdala receives data showing a massive gap between expectation and reality, it treats that gap as an immediate physical danger. The system assumes that if an environment is lying to your eyes, it might be hiding a threat. The amygdala immediately floods the human body with a subtle wave of adrenaline and cortisol, causing the heart rate to pick up, the skin to cool, and the muscles to tighten. This intense biological reaction is rooted in a foundational concept of evolutionary biology known as error management theory. This scientific theory explains that human survival throughout history depended entirely on how early human ancestors handled ambiguous or confusing situations. Imagine an early human walking through a dark forest thousands of years ago. Suddenly, a nearby bush rustles. The human brain can make two distinct choices in that exact split second. It can assume the rustling sound is just a harmless breeze, which scientists call a false negative error. Or it can assume the sound is a dangerous predator waiting to attack, which is known as a false positive error. If the ancestor assumes it is a predator, but it turns out to be just the wind, they lose absolutely nothing except a few seconds of peace. They survive to hunt another day. But if they assume it is just the wind, and it actually turns out to be a hidden mountain lion, they make a fatal mistake and die on the spot. Because the cost of missing a real threat was death, evolution carefully selected and designed the humans who were hyper-paranoid about their surroundings. Modern human brains are the direct historical result of survivors who always assumed the worst about weird, unnatural setups. Humans are hardwired to be deeply suspicious of environments that look normal on the surface but feel deeply wrong underneath. For early ancestors, a patch of leaves that looked slightly too perfect usually meant a hidden pitfall trap dug by a hostile tribe. A sudden total silence in a valley that was usually loud with bird calls meant a large predator was actively hunting nearby. The human mind learned to treat any environmental contradiction as a warning sign of a trap. An empty television studio triggers this exact same prehistoric survival code with incredible force. To human evolutionary wiring, the dark set is a deeply deceptive environment. The brain looks at the fake brick walls that end abruptly in dark corners, and it looks at the giant black camera lenses staring blindly from the shadows like unblinking eyes. The primitive mind cannot figure out why a space would pretend to be a safe human home while remaining completely cold, hollow, and mechanical underneath. It senses a deliberate trick. It suspects that something dangerous is waiting just outside the edge of the light. The ancient survival system keeps the body locked in a state of quiet panic, forcing humans to remain fully alert against a threat they cannot see. This biological alertness intensifies the moment our eyes lock onto the specific physical objects scattered across the abandoned set. In a live production, television cameras function as active tools of human connection. Their wheels move smoothly, their small tally lights glow a bright red, and they serve as the direct windows through which millions of outside eyes view the performance. But when the studio turns cold and quiet, these massive machines undergo a deeply eerie transformation. They stop being tools and instead turn into dark, heavy predatory shapes, resting silently in the shadows. Their giant glass lenses point blindly forward into the empty room, like massive, unblinking eyes. Because human beings are naturally hardwired by evolution to detect when something is watching them, standing directly in front of these dead lenses triggers an immediate, defensive reaction deep inside the nervous system. The brain senses the physical shape of an eye, but it cannot find any warmth or human soul behind it. It feels exactly like being watched by a lifeless object, creating a quiet layer of paranoia that completely fills the empty room. This unblinking mechanical gaze makes it impossible to find any real peace within the space. The second major environmental trigger that shatters our psychological comfort is the jarring structural contrast between the floor and the ceiling. If a person keeps their eyes fixed strictly on the lower half of the space, they see a perfectly polished and beautiful world. They look at smooth painted floors, elegant wooden furniture, clean kitchen counters, and brightly colored walls that look completely inviting. But the exact moment the gaze shifts upward, the comfortable illusion falls apart completely. There is no normal ceiling to close the room and provide a sense of shelter. Instead, the beautiful set ends abruptly, revealing a massive, chaotic industrial void right above the furniture. High overhead, a vast network of heavy iron grids hangs from the dark concrete roof. Hundreds of massive black spotlights hang down like sleeping bats, their cold metal bodies covered in a thick layer of gray dust. A messy web of thick electrical cables, metal air vents, and industrial pipes stretches across the endless black expanse. This sudden view of mechanical chaos directly above a cozy living room causes a form of spatial whiplash. It forces the human mind to process two completely different realities at the exact same moment. The bottom half of your vision communicates safety and warmth, while the top half communicates a cold industrial factory, preventing the mind from ever feeling truly settled in this environment. This strange structural division brings us directly to the concept of liminality, a term environmental psychologists use to describe spaces caught between two different states of being. A liminal space is a location that exists solely to move a person from one point to another. These are transitional areas designed exclusively for movement and temporary use, not for staying or living. Think of a massive airport terminal during the middle of the night, a long hotel hallway with identical closed doors, or a quiet highway rest stop desk at 3 in the morning. When these places are filled with traveling crowds and bright lights, they feel normal and safe. But when you remove the human noise and activity, you strip away the entire purpose of the architecture. The physical shell remains fully intact, but the inner life is completely dead. A television studio is a uniquely fragile liminal space because its entire identity depends on a single event of the broadcast. The set does not exist for the people standing inside the room. It exists exclusively for the digital image sent to screens somewhere else. When the broadcast concludes, the studio becomes a physical structure, frozen in a state of absolute uselessness, an empty stage with nowhere left to go, caught forever between the world of fiction and the world of reality. Psychological studies show that human beings experience the highest levels of emotional comfort in environments that possess clear, honest, and permanent functions. We thrive in rooms that do not lie about what they are, and we need our surroundings to remain stable. When we find ourselves trapped in a space that sits on the blurry line between reality and fiction, our sense of environmental security completely collapses. This is why the unsettling vibe of an empty studio connects so deeply with the universal fear of abandoned places that many people share around the world. It is the architectural equivalent of the uncanny valley effect. Just as a human-like robot looks incredibly creepy because its face is almost human, but not quite. These empty sets look creepy because they are almost real rooms, but not quite. They are dead copies of an everyday reality that never actually existed, built to manipulate human perception from a distance. When we stand inside this hollow landscape, we realize that the space is a physical lie, and that understanding leaves behind a deep emotional chill that forces us to question our surroundings. As we slowly step back toward the exit and look at that quiet television set, one last time, we must face the real question. We do not actually fear the hollow plastic walls, the fake books, or the giant dead lenses resting in the dark. Our discomfort runs much deeper because that empty room is a mirror. It forces us to look at the artificial spaces we navigate every single day. Think about the cold corporate offices, the heavily filtered social media feeds, and the social masks we wear just to fit into a crowd. We spend our entire lives inside environments designed to manufacture an illusion of safety and connection. When the stage lights go down, the spell breaks. We are left staring at the raw framework of a planned reality, wondering how much of our own world is actually genuine. It leaves us with a chilling realization about the fragile nature of truth. We build entire societies on these glossy frontages, pretending that the systems around us are solid and permanent. Yet all it takes is one quiet moment in an empty room to expose the massive gaps in our perception. Our minds desperately cling to the familiar patterns because the alternative is too terrifying to accept. We prefer a comfortable deception over a raw and unpredictable emptiness. If a simple empty set can completely shatter your trust in what your eyes see, what else in your daily life is a lie? How much of your personality is just a curated performance for an invisible audience? How do you know that your own home, your career, or your relationships are not just cheap plywood props held together by industrial tape? Perhaps you are just an actor, playing a part in a show you never chose. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let us debate how deep this illusion really goes. If you are brave enough to dive deeper into the darkest corners of human psychology, hit that subscribe button, and leave a like if you made it to the very end. I am Beyond the Creep, and I will see you in the next dark corner.